What's up, everybody? Welcome to One Church. I want to say hello to everybody at our Gahanna campus, everybody at Northwest campus, everybody online. Thank you for joining today. And this is my wife, Shaylin.
Hey, guys.
And my name's Greg, and we are here to share a message with you. We're in a series right now called The Secret Sauce. And the secret sauce in this content is conflict.
Which is why I'm here, because I'm the person that he gets to have the most conflict with, so we're experts.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about this because I think it's really critical, really important. You know, when you think about, how do you get better in relationships? How do organizations and businesses solve problems? How do churches or ministries, or even honestly wrestling with yourself, or even having real truth in your relationship with God, right? Some people have a conflict they need to have with God or scared to. And so I think when we look at having conflict, if we're willing to do this and we learn how to do it well, it improves our mental health. It improves our relationship to ourselves, certainly our families, our culture. I mean, don't you think if we could snap our fingers or we could teach a lesson for our culture to get good at something, conflict would maybe be that thing.
No doubt.
That would help us to be able to move forward together. So we've been talking about this for a few weeks. We're going to kind of share this. And let's kick off with this. I asked you to come up with 3 of your favorite quotes about conflict. I have no idea which ones that you chose. I'm going to be hearing this at the same time as you do, and then I'm going to share some of mine. We're going to go rapid fire.
All right. So are you? To see if we have any overlap. This will be fun.
We might. Are you ready? You go first.
I'm ready. All right. First. So my first one is from Gandhi. All right. So Mahatma Gandhi, and I love it. It says, "An eye for an eye will only make the whole world blind."
It's good.
It's a good
It's a
one.
word. All right, mine is from Horace Mann. This is really good. I love this one. It says, "Do not think of knocking out another person's brains because he differs in opinion from you. It would be as rational to knock yourself in the head because you differ from yourself 10 years ago."
Ooh,
That's a word.
Okay.
That's a word right there. All right?
Okay.
All right, bring it. What you got next?
All right, so this next one is one of my first crushes when I was 5 years old.
Wait. Charlton Heston?
No, but you're close. Ronald
Yul
Reagan.
Brynner, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan.
Don't judge me, okay? I was a weird kid.
All right, okay.
I'm impressed that you got the Charlton Heston piece.
I see how you look at Yul Brynner during the 10 Commandments.
Man, anyways, we're going to move on. All right, so Ronald Reagan said, "Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means." I like that.
It's good. It's a word. All right, I'm going for my spirit animal on this one.
All right.
Winston Churchill.
All right.
It's my dude. Winston Churchill's
Yes.
my dude. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen.
Ooh.
And all the people
right.
said amen.
All right.
Amen.
Now, my last one is actually from my biggest crush, Greg Ford. All right.
This is a surprise, not the
This is-
crush.
I know.
But the quote, okay.
I would hope not the crush. All right, it's actually a little song, maybe a little bit of a limerick.
Okay.
I think you know exactly where I'm going.
I think, I know several limericks.
All right.
Okay.
So this one may not have originated with you, but this is where I heard it for the first
Okay.
time. It says, "Here's to you, here's to me. May we never disagree. But if we do, heck with you, and here's to me."
I did not know you were going to do that,
Favorite.
but that's
I'm
a good
sorry.
one.
That is not actually how I feel about conflict, but it's my favorite. I think it's hilarious.
All right, so here's my last one to kind of lead us into our conflict. This is actually from Scott Hagan, who's a friend of mine, a friend of ours, and president of North Central University. And he said, "Conflict arises when an underreaction meets an overreaction."
So good.
When an underreaction meets an overreaction. Hey, have you ever had a situation that caused you to react? You felt emotion, and maybe you were frustrated that the person that you were having a conflict with or a situation going on, they weren't reacting as appropriately as you thought they should. They weren't as passionate or they weren't as angry as you were. And so we see this, again, happen all the time in relationships, in families, in communities. And what ends up happening is the original action is no longer the biggest offense, right? That people become more offended when someone comes across too passive towards something that is very personal and emotional to them. And so then this is what happens is the two people like sort of turn on each other, because you have one person that's going, man, like you ought to care like I do. Like you should be as angry as I am. And so they're like, really, really passionate and trying to communicate that with their energy. And then this other person is like, man, you're out of control, or you're trying to manipulate me and trying to project your energy onto me. And so they end up doing a lot of finger pointing, and one person is pointing the finger and saying, you need to care more. And the other person's pointing the finger saying, you need to calm down. And it ends up creating a conflict, which kind of brings up the question is, what does it mean, especially in an intense conflict, like something that really matters? Maybe somebody really hurt somebody, or like something's really wrong. How do I know if I'm reacting appropriately? Am I overreacting or am I underreacting?
Yeah,
and then the person across from me, are you overreacting or are you underreacting? So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go into a made-up story that Jesus made up, a parable. Last week a couple weeks ago, we looked at a story where actually Jesus had a conflict with Peter 2 weeks ago. But this one, we're gonna do one that was Jesus like tailor-made this story. And so it starts out, it's the story of the prodigal son. Quick summary to bring us up to verse 17. We're in Luke chapter 15, by the way. If you have your Bible, feel free to open up your Bible. But Luke chapter 15, the story of the prodigal son is a young man comes to his father and quite audaciously said to his father, hey, you're gonna die one day. Eventually I'm gonna get half your stuff. How about right now you just give me half so I can enjoy it while I'm young, essentially is what he says. Yeah. And the father, like, inexplicably decides, yes, I'm gonna do it. So he gives him half the stuff. He goes off and blows the money. A famine hits the land. He runs through half the family estate. And so now he hits rock bottom. He gets a job on a farm, and basically he's eating out of trash cans, essentially. He's about to eat pig food because he is starving to death. And so that's where we'll pick up in verse 17. Why don't you read it?
Yeah, so this is Luke 15, 17 through 32. So it says, when he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. So I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me as a hired servant. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. But his father said to the servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on. Get a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. So the party began. Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of the servants what was going on. Your brother is back, he was told, and your father has killed the fattened calf. We're celebrating because of his safe return. The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came and begged him, but he replied, all these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to do. And in all that time, you never even gave me one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. His father said to him, look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day. For your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he's found.
All right, so it's worth noting that the intent of this parable, in the way that it's normally taught, is to represent the love of the Father to somebody who has messed up big time, right? So Jesus makes this up. He actually tells it in a trifecta of parables. He tells them consecutively. The first one's the lost sheep. Remember that one about there's 100 sheep and one's lost and he leaves the 99 for the one. And then there's the lost coin. So a woman had 10 coins, she lost one, swept the whole house to get that coin back. And then he tells the third one that's gonna hit a lot closer to home because it's this human relationship. And Jesus adds this character of the brother. Now, Jesus could have told this totally different of just the prodigal and the father.
Right.
There was a son, he screws up, he goes off, he blows the money, he comes back, father loves him, accepts him. But Jesus inserts this other character of the brother because even though it's a fictional story, this is real life. I mean, this is how things go, to where you have people picking up the pieces in these offenses. And then, okay, so how do we work these things through?
What?
So Jesus tells it in a parable. I wish it would have been a novel, because I would have liked to have heard, what happened in the next chapter and what happened after the party and everything.
I need the prequel and the sequel.
Exactly. But what I want to really dig into first is to really validate, honestly, the older brother's feelings. Okay? Because a lot of times the older brother is like the villain in the story. Like, it's like, hey, you self-righteous people, you're not perfect either, and you should come into the party. But I sat down and I just had to get in the head of the older brother for a minute, and I came up with, and I'm going to go real fast here, but 10 reasons why the older brother is valid in his feelings, okay? So I'm going to pretend for a moment that I am the older brother.
You seem very ready.
I'm
just reading
locked
your
and
body
loaded,
language.
okay? I wrote these down, okay? I spent time on this.
Okay.
All right, so these are 10 reasons. If I was the older brother, I would have been mad. Number one, if your brother was enough of a punk to ask for half of the stuff that your dad worked for and move away, it probably isn't the first time that he displayed highly immature, entitled, abrasive behavior. In other words, this has been brewing for a little bit. Number two, dad gave away half of the estate without even consulting me. Didn't ask my opinion, didn't ask me what I thought. And this decision, by the way, is wrong. It makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't make sense as a leader, father, or businessman, all right? Number three, while bro is out jet setting and living La Vida Loca, he left me with half the resources and double the work. So every day I wake up, scrap, claw, and try to get out of the hole that he created with his giant act of selfishness. Number four, I had to cope with the suffering people who have been left behind to pick up the pieces of this stupid pact that my father and brother came up with. Let me name a few, i.e. my mother, who cries her way through her feelings every day. Also, the people who work for our family business, the faithful, long-suffering, long-standing, good-hearted employees that we had to let go because we only had half the resources, because my brother was shoving our resources in his nose, in his arm, or our resources were fluttering around a strip club. Number five, I thought and probably said out loud, I hope he never comes back. And then I fantasized about the day that if he did come back, of what I would do if he ever showed his face around here again. Number six, when he eventually does come home broke and hungry, he shows his face, and his face is now broke and hungry. After burning through our family money, Luke 15:22 says that the father gave him, quote, the finest robe in the house. Not the second finest robe in the house, the finest robe in the house. Not a very nice robe. He gave him the nicest one, leaving me with at least second best. Number seven, they killed the fattened calf. Luke 15:23 says they went and killed the calf. Look at this. We have been fattening, the father says. We. Who's we? Me. I've been the one. So you could also read it this way. Hey, we killed the work that I've been doing every morning at 5 a.m. Number 8 reason, for a second time, Dad made a big decision that affects me and never asked my opinion. Didn't ask me if I was cool with him putting a ring on the finger, robe on the back, or killing the fattened calf. Affects me, apparently. My opinion doesn't matter. Number 9, they partied while I continued to work. It says in Luke 15:24 and 25, the party began. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field working. Nobody texted me. Nobody came out and said, hey, just so you know, there's a party going on. We got food. We killed the fattened calf. Get in here before they eat it all up. But I returned home hearing music, a little confused as to why there's dancing in the house, and a servant has to come out and say, hey, by the way, your brother's home didn't sit well. Number 10 is in Luke 15:29, after the father comes out from the party to beg me to come in and to celebrate this joyous occasion, I say to him this: after all these years, I've slaved for you. And frankly, that was my issue. I feel like a slave. I've been out here slaving. I never once refused to do a single thing you told me to do, he says in verse 29. And all that time, you never even gave me a young goat for a feast with me and my well-behaved friends. So the question that I'm asking, frankly, is why have I lived a moral, diligent, integral life if you only throw parties for idiots?
Okay.
Do you have anything to add to my list of 10?
I feel like you got it. I feel like you covered the bases pretty well.
Okay.
Those were a lot of things. It was good. No, in all honesty, though, the thing that jumps out at me about that is that all of his feelings are totally appropriate. All of his feelings are totally valid. I think sometimes we tend to look at that and we judge it, or we judge our own feelings and we ascribe like morality to our feelings. Feelings are actually morally neutral. It's not wrong to have a feeling. What you do in response to that feeling is right or wrong. But you can't control the fact that you have certain feelings, right? So think of a time when maybe somebody got under your skin so bad. You were so over it. You were so annoyed. You were angry. You were whatever. And you didn't want to be. You didn't choose that. You didn't choose the feeling. It's happening to you. That is not your fault. That's not a sin, right? Maybe for somebody, like you have a moment where you can think of a time that you realized you were jealous of somebody else. And you're like, I do not like this about me. This is ugly. I don't want to. Don't judge yourself for that, because feelings are morally neutral. You can't help your feelings. But you can help what actions you choose, right? Feelings happen to you. Your reaction is a choice. So
it's really good. Where
the brother is in this, every single one of the 10 things you listed, and probably 50 more that if we had the prequel and the sequel, we would know, all of these other reasons for why he's upset about things. Those are all valid feelings, but what he does with them is what matters. So for me, I look at this and I go, okay, you talked a minute ago about underreactions and overreactions. And I think that sometimes we tend to think, we all have this picture of what appropriate reaction is in our mind. Like, I expect somebody to react just like this, and that is what feels right to me. They need to be this angry or this contrite, or it needs to look like this. They need to be this quiet about it, or they need to be crying, or they need to be yelling, or whatever. Those things are different for every single one of us, because we all have different personality types. Mm-hmm. So there is no one normal, healthy reaction. As far as what you do outwardly, it's going to be different for every single human being. And so we have to give each other grace for that. For example, for you and I, like, you are an external processor. So if there's a conflict, you're going to want to talk. You're going to want to rapid fire, like your brain is going off and you're going to want to spill all of this stuff out. For me, I'm the type of person that I actually like to kind of take a step back after things have been put out in the open and process it, and then come back to the confrontation or the conflict. Neither of those things is wrong. Everybody's different. We're all wired differently, and that's completely okay. What is wrong is when we take those things and we kind of go with a knee-jerk version of how we're wired, a knee-jerk unhealthy reaction. And we have to be self-aware and not just react exactly how like the lowest form of us would want to. So for example, for somebody who's an external processor, or who wants to like rapid fire talk things through, the initial reaction for you, the knee jerk might be that you want to just jump in and like spew it all, and you might end up saying some things you regret. So your action needs to be a little bit different than your gut reaction, and you need to go, you know what, I actually should take a step back. I should take a little bit of time and think about it. For me, or for someone who's wired more like me, where you kind of want to step back and process for a little bit, we might have to go, you know what, my gut reaction, my initial knee-jerk reaction is that I actually kind of want to step back entirely and avoid it and kick the can down the road and really not have this conversation because I don't like confrontation. And the healthy reaction for me to go is, okay, I'm going to give myself a little bit of time to process this, but then I'm going to put a set deadline in front of myself when we're going to come back to this. And I'm not going to just let it go on forever. I'm going to have the courage to confront. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a fine line between patience and procrastination.
100%.
And you got to be self-aware to know the difference.
100%. So I think the most important thing in this is the speed of reaction or intensity is actually not necessarily reflecting the depth of how something is affecting somebody. So we tend to judge, like, are you overreacting or underreacting based on what I see on the surface? And that's not the actual measure of it. The relationship between our feelings and actions is the most important part. You know, there's one other piece of this, and I think it's that a lot of times we think that our feelings lead first. It's like the cart and the horse, or the chicken and the egg. We think our feelings come first and our actions follow. Like, if I feel loving towards this person, I'm going to have loving actions. If I'm feeling unhealthy, or, unhealthy things towards this person, that's going to follow. It's actually the reverse. Our actions should lead the way, and our feelings will follow. Because sometimes the right thing to do is not going to be the thing you want to do. right? So for us, we have to go, I'm going to choose to treat this person in a Christ-like way, in a loving way, in a healthy, kind way. And what's beautiful about it is that if I make that choice with my actions, eventually my feelings will come into line and follow.
All right, so let's look at some specific actions that can pull you along, right, into a better place. Let's look at apologizing.
There you
Okay,
go.
okay.
That's a
What
good
does
place
that
to
look like?
start.
All right, like I mean, where do we learn how to apologize? How do we get good at it?
Most of us, I was going to say, most of us didn't ever actually have somebody teach us how to apologize. Like, did any of you take Apology 101 in college? I think I slept through it.
No, it's like your parents are like, tell her you're sorry.
Right.
You know, it's like, I'm sorry. You know, it's like, I mean, you know, as a kid, and then
Or
we
maybe
get
your
worse.
family never apologized to each other, and stuff just blew up and got swept under the rug.
Yeah.
We learned just by whatever we watched around us.
Yeah. So let's look at some specific handles around apologizing. Actually, one of the people we learn from is the prodigal son. It says in Luke 15, 18, and 19, okay, when he's with the pigs, when he is, even before he's gone home, he starts practicing his apology before he gets there.
Yeah.
It says in verse 18, he says, I will go home to my father and say, and look at this. I mean, he literally writes the apology
verbatim.
verbatim with the pigs. He's like, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you. I mean, that's contrite. He owned it. He's like, man, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to candy coat it. Like, I sinned against heaven and you. And then look at this. He says, I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. Now, I want you to see what happens here. He owns this, but when he goes home, two things are dealt with, his shame and his guilt. What's the difference between shame and guilt, right? Shame is feeling bad about who I am. Guilt is feeling bad about what I've done, okay? Shame is feeling bad about who I am. What does the son say? I've screwed up so bad that I now feel shame, which is I am no longer a son. At best, I'm a servant or a slave. And so when he comes home, his father putting a ring on his finger and a robe on his back and killing the fattened calf was dealing with his shame. He's saying, look, yes, you have some guilt in your life. You have some things you did that were really horrible, but you are still my son. So he deals with the core of the person. Yeah. He deals with the identity of the son. Now, here's the second thing, though. The party really was representing the grace, and the party was representing dealing with the shame. But the reality is, dude, you still did a bunch of stuff that you really need for a moment to sit and feel the weight of what you did. That's okay to do. You don't want to spend the rest of your life beating yourself up for a mistake.
Right.
At some point, you got to move on, but some point you got to sit there and own it.
Right.
At some point, you have to sit there and go, you know, I did hurt people. Like the 10 things I just listed off. The prodigal son would do well before he says I'm sorry to actually be sorry.
Yeah.
How do you become sorry? You sit and think about it. Man, I took half the stuff and left them with twice the work. Man, people lost their jobs because I jacked the family business. Hey, I wonder what it did for mom. I wonder what it did for, these other employees. I wonder how my brother feels about it. So think about this. What it says here is that the prodigal rehearsed a very contrite apology to his father, but he never apologized to his brother.
Yeah.
So first question, like if you got something that you need to own, who do I need to apologize to? The second question is, who else do I need to apologize to?
Yeah.
Who else do I need to apologize to? Imagine how this could have gone differently. Brother comes home. They want to kill the fattened calf. Now, if the son was truly contrite, he didn't walk into this party like this.
Right.
Okay, he wasn't thumping his chest going into the party because he came in going, man, I don't even deserve to be a son. And if he truly was contrite, the party was probably overwhelming.
Yeah.
He probably came into the party like this, like, guys, please don't. Don't kill the fattened calf. Don't put this robe on me. Like, if that was his position. But to go, before we strike up the band and start serving up fillets, where is my brother? Where is my mother? I want to make my apologies before we celebrate. Imagine he goes out to the field and addresses his brother before the party. Or his brother comes in from the party and he's like, where'd dad go? He's out there talking to your brother. Imagine, I just want you to imagine for a minute. This story goes a little different. Imagine the prodigal son walks out with a ring on his finger and a robe on his back, and the party's going, and the prodigal son goes to his brother and he takes the ring off his finger and he puts it on his brother's hand.
Wow.
And he takes off his robe and he puts it on his brother's back. And he says, man, you're the real MVP. You're the one, like, I know right now you really can't fully forgive me, and there's nothing I can say right now that's going to undo what I did. But what I'm asking you for two things. One, will you forgive me? And number two, will you give me an opportunity to show you over time? So apologizing. Talk is cheap. Cheap talk is expensive.
There you go.
So at a certain point, like, I'm going to say this, and there are some things that do need to be said, okay? But you prove the sincerity of the apology by what you do after you say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And there are things that need to be said to people and to work out between people, not just you and God, not just you and Dad. Sometimes it's you to somebody else. Look at this verse. James 5:16 says, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we can confess to God and we're forgiven by God, but we're healed brother to brother by confessing the sin, by apologizing, and by praying for one another and making things right between each other. So I'm sorry is great, but who do I need to apologize to? Who else do I need to apologize to? And how do I need to apologize?
Yeah, that's huge. That's so huge. And I think on the other side, you spent a little bit of time talking about on the prodigal side, what he could do differently. I think when we take a step over and look at the older brother side, one of the things that I think we tend to do when we're in those shoes, when we have those scenarios, is we look at the moment of the party, whatever that is in our lives, right? When we're like celebrating that someone is coming back. And it's really easy to look at that and go, oh, great, so everything that's happened is just like, it's not a big deal.
Right.
It never really happened. We're kind of just going to pretend like it wasn't a big deal.
We're going to underreact.
Yeah, we're going to underreact. We're going to just smooth all that over, erase it, rewrite revisionist history here, and then we're just going to pretend like everything's cool and that like all of our trust is rebuilt instantly and we're all good.
Like this is Disney.
And that's not reality,
Right.
right? Here's what I think is really beautiful, and actually the Father brings it out in his statement. He's in 15:31 and 32, his Father said to him, look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day. This day. The party is not saying that all of the past is erased and that the rest of the world, like moving forward, is just going to be magical. What it's saying is, it's right for us to celebrate that this is the end of that era and a point of hope looking towards the future. That's worth celebrating.
It's a foundation.
It's a foundation. So think about this. Before a building is ever built, before a foundation is even ever laid, right? An actual physical building. When it's a big, important building that people are going to build, what do?
They throw a party.
They go out there. Yeah, they go out there with golden shovels and hard hats on and a photographer and a small group of all the people that really need to see this moment, and they break ground.
Yeah, wow.
That's what the party is.
Yeah.
The party is not the ribbon cutting ceremony. Hey, building's done. Everything's good and back to normal. The party is the groundbreaking day, right? Where we go, nothing is built yet. We're getting ready to lay a foundation and start rebuilding some trust on top of it, a foundation of grace and trust on top of it. None of that has happened yet, but we're going to celebrate the fact that we actually even have a shot at rebuilding this relationship. That's a big deal. At seeing this person rebuilt. That's huge.
That's really good. You think about those pictures. They're sticking the shovel in the ground and the land looks terrible.
Yeah.
You know, there's no pretty buildings.
It's a wasteland.
Yeah, all you have is a dream of what it could be.
Yeah.
There's lots of work to do, but we're celebrating that we can put shovels
And
in the ground.
someday, at the ribbon cutting ceremony, when that day actually comes, those golden shovels are hanging in a case on the wall with the picture above, and we're remembering where it all started.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really healthy perspective for us if any of us are ever walking through those kind of moments in our life where we're like, this person has screwed up so royal, and I've done no wrong in this situation. I've been faithful all this time to remind ourselves this is not saying that the past was no big deal, and it's not saying that the future is just golden. It's saying we have a hope. There's grace here. So with that said, grace is the foundation we build on, right? That's what we're talking about. And that goes on both sides. For the prodigal son, he's going to need to give himself grace because probably waves of shame and guilt are going to keep hitting him over time. And if he had problems with maybe, alcohol over the years or whatever, that's going to come up, and and when the pressure is mounting and stress is going on and I feel like people aren't believing in me, what is my coping mechanism, right? It's going to be hard for me to not fall back into old habits. So there needs to be grace there. On the opposite side, for the people who are in the older brother's shoes, there needs to be grace for him too. Because guess what? As much as he may want to believe in his brother and believe that everything's going to be cool and that they can rebuild and trust him and want him to succeed, there are going to be times where something happens that triggers a memory. Maybe, Sam, the younger brother's going, man, where's Sam, that guy that used to, manage this part of our business? Well, he doesn't work here anymore. We had to cut him because we couldn't afford to pay him. And that's going to trigger all this anger for him all over again. It's not linear. The healing of the relationship and the moving forward sometimes is going to have ebbs and flows and be messy and muddy. You just got to be okay with it. So here's the other piece, by the way. I think sometimes people think that in order to show support and love for the person who's in the prodigal position in their life, that it means like, well, I let them just keep failing and failing and failing, and we're just going to throw a party every time, and it's going to be good, we'll keep trying. No, it's okay for you to have boundaries during the process.
Right.
It's actually a really good idea for you to have some guardrails on this building project, right? So for you, maybe that looks like, the brother doesn't get the keys to the safe right now.
Yeah, he took half
Pardon
our,
me
he
if
took
we
half
don't
our
trust
stuff.
you with money yet.
Exactly.
Like, it's okay if we're not going to have you managing the books quite yet, right?
Yeah.
It may mean that I need you here at 7 a.m. sharp every day, and I need you to hold to your word.
You're going to work for free for a while.
While we rebuild things,
I mean,
absolutely, and
to
that
rebuild
can
trust.
take all kinds of different forms in your life. Maybe you've got somebody in your life that this is the 5th, 6th, 7th relapse on something, and you're going, I paid for rehab last time. Maybe I can't this time,
Right.
or I'm not going to put my family through that. But I'm going to drive you there. I'm
Right.
still going to support you and believe in you and go, we're going to try again. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I can put up guardrails in my own life and go, I'm not just going to give that person free reign in my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's real.
The last piece I think is patience with the process for both people.
Yeah.
Be patient with each other and with yourself, because it isn't going to be linear. It isn't going to be smooth. There are going to be times that person is on your last nerve. There are going to be times that you're frustrated with your own lack of progress and how slow things are going. That's okay. Be patient with the process. So with all of that in mind, I think the next question is, you've talked about apologizing. Now let's talk about the forgiveness piece. How do I know if I've fully forgiven someone? If I'm having this non-linear experience where it's going back and forth and I'm frustrated, but also I want, I don't like the fact that my feelings are what they are. I want my reaction.
That's how you drop the mic right there.
There
That, I mean, that
Mean
was
to.
impressive. No, but it's a great question
Yeah.
because you're going, how do I know if I've fully forgiven?
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're the prodigal, you're feeling not forgiven because you put boundaries on me, or
Right.
you don't trust me yet. And then if you're the older brother, you're going, I don't know, is some of this vindictive? Am I doing this
Yeah.
for, what are my motives?
I think we've all been in a situation at some point in our lives where we cognitively go, I think I've forgiven this person. I want to forgive this person, but I still have kind of some of these like yucky feelings swirling around. So have I forgiven them? How do I know that?
All right, so let's do this. I'm going to draw it for you real quick, and I want you to think through and apply this to your situation where you're trying to move to a healthy place. Kind of a spectrum of kind of extreme ends of how we feel about somebody we're having like a terrible conflict with, okay? The first extreme end is tearing them down, okay? Tearing them down. This is what we talked about a couple weeks ago about attacking someone. You want to inflict pain on them, right? So let's say you're in a messy divorce. It's painful. Somebody cheated on you, or they hurt you, or they broke your heart, and you're mad about it, okay? And so you're in a mode here where you go, I have made it my business to tear them down, okay? They hurt me, I'm going to hurt them. They will suffer as I've suffered. We're talking scorched earth. I want a pound of flesh, okay? I want them to be embarrassed. I want this to cost them. I want them to lose friends over it. I want them to lose face. And so you are on the offensive, and so you're in tear down mode, and this is active stuff. And some people do it like unhinged, out of control, and some people do it covertly with some, well, let me do, and things behind the scenes. But you want them To hurt.
To hurt like you hurt.
Exactly. All right. The second one isn't actively tearing them down, but it's just hoping they fail. Okay. You're not out there. You're not out there trying to necessarily actively get them. You just hope. You hope they fail. You want to see them fall on their face, okay? Say you're a wife who is in a marriage with a guy, and he wasn't affectionate and he wasn't romantic, and he hadn't romanced you in years or bought you flowers or said anything nice to you or did anything, and then you guys have a falling out, and then he goes and finds a new woman, and now he's Casanova. And now it's Flowers Friday every day. And he's out here doing romantic stuff, and he's on there talking about she's my earth, and she's my queen, and all this stuff, and doting on her stuff that you never did. And in your mind, you may not go at him and go slash his tires, but you're going, you know what? I hope that relationship blows up.
Rolling in the back
I
of your head.
hope that thing crashes and burns, okay, and your queen does you like you did me, all right? Or maybe you had a business partner. Again, you're not out behind their back, going Watergate on them, but you're over here going, you know what? I hope their business blows up. So every time something falls or you hear news about it ain't going so good, you're like, okay. You're just hoping. Yeah. You're hoping that they fail. All right. The next move over here is actually getting to a place where you're able to heal and forgive enough that you're actually hoping they win.
Wow.
You're hoping they win. You may not actually even be helping them yet. You just get to a place where your heart has healed enough. It would take a huge person to have an ugly divorce and to come out of this and to go from, man, I want to humiliate them, to, you know what, I'm just rooting for them to fail, to get to a place of forgiveness and healing and wholeness to where you said, deep down, even in your own heart, you went, I hope this is a turning point.
Yeah.
I hope they do have a change of character. I hope they do have a transformation. I hope they do learn how to value somebody else. I hope they do. I hope God gets a hold of their life. That you're actually hoping they win. So you wonder, have I fully forgiven somebody? And this is where the 70 times 7, we got to forgive. Because you may look at a certain point, go, I'm still rooting for them to fail. I got to be honest with you. In my life, I don't think I have anybody who I'm actively trying to tear down unless I'm missing something. But there's a few people in my life I'm in the process of healing. I wouldn't mind them see fall on their face. I'm just being honest with you. And to me, that's a trigger to go, bro, you need to keep forgiving. You got to keep forgiving. You got to keep healing. And someday where I go, I wish the best for them. And then the fourth step here is actually to where you're building them up instead of tearing them down. You may be actually actively building them up. Maybe you're opening doors for them. You're resourcing. You're giving them opportunities. You're giving them second chances. Now, here's the deal. Some relationships based on context, based on things that have happened, they may never get here. That's okay. Every relationship can get here.
That's right.
Every conflict can get here. And as you said before about the push-pull, what's the cart and what's the horse, sometimes I choose actions, because these two are actions, these two are attitudes. These two are actions. Tearing them down is an action. Building them up is an action. An attitude or a condition of the heart is hoping they fail or hoping they win. There may be a season that I actually help build them up when in my heart, I'm still at the place where I kind of hope they fail. But I go, you know what? I'm going to do some things to help them win in a situation, even though I'll bet you the prodigal, there was part of him, the older brother, in relation to the prodigal and the father, there was probably part of that older brother that's like, I hope he screws up again.
Yeah.
So I can come to dad and go, you gave him half the stuff, you killed the fattened calf, you hired a DJ and threw a big party, and he got you again. What are we going to do now? We got no more fat cows. We got no more fat calves. We got no more rings and robes. He took the ring. There's part of him going, I hope it happens so I can say I told you so. And he may have been there in his feelings, in his attitude, and say, I'm going to make a choice actually to help build him up. Because eventually I want to get to a place where I'm going, I believe that he's going to win. I believe that he can do better. And I'm rooting for him and I'm cheering for him. So to be honest, guys, this is not super clean. There are times you may go backwards. You start to get to where you think you're here. Somebody does something, a post comes across, and you go, I hope they fail. I hope it blows up on them. You know, I mean, we're human beings. Right. This whole thing has to be cloaked in grace. Yes. It has to be cloaked in grace. Whether you're the prodigal or the brother or the father or the mother, everybody has to give grace to one another. To be able to step back and go, how can I get to where I'm moving this way? How do I get to where I'm moving this way? And some of these things, man, are things you just have to allow the Holy Spirit to search your heart and to say, am I there? Am I there? Lord, do I have a blind spot? Am I actually really rooting for their demise? And yet you want to do something in me that will help me get to a better place. So let's do this. Let's take a moment right now. And I want you to think back over the things that we talked about. Overreacting, underreacting. How do I know? Maybe you look and you say, you know, maybe you need to give grace to somebody else in your life who isn't reacting the way you think that they should. Maybe for you, it's actually putting some boundaries on yourself to go, you know, I really want to come in with a sharp tongue, or I really want to answer them right now. And you go, no, you know what? That's my nature, but I'm going to have the discipline to step back.
Right.
I'm going to give it a couple days. I'm going to really pray it through. Maybe it's an apology. You prepare an apology. Maybe you write out an apology, or you run it past somebody else and go. Maybe you take a moment to sit in what you did, not so that you drag it through the rest of your life, but for the moment to feel the sorrow, to feel the weight of what you did, so that when you go to say I'm sorry, you actually mean it. You're not just trying to get it so we can move past it.
Yeah.
I feel it. Maybe it's some of that, or maybe you find yourself somewhere on this spectrum between tearing down and building up and what you really hope for. Let's allow God right now to search each one of us and help pull us and move us in the right direction.